My name is Jim Sourbeer. I'm the Chief of Police for the Borough of Waynesboro in Franklin County, Pennsylvania. Over the last several weeks, I have received multiple emails, telephone calls, personal visits at the station from citizens who are concerned about the hiring practices of the Waynesboro Police Department, how we recruit, how we vet our employees, and more importantly, how we maintain control of the employees, and how we handle complaints of misconducts and discipline when our employees are involved. Rather than continue to repeat these things on an individual basis, I thought that it might be beneficial if we took the opportunity to avail ourselves of the technology that is available and post some of this information out to the general public so that you have a more comprehensive understanding of how we value the trust and the responsibility that you place in us and what we do to assure that we provide individuals of the highest degree of competency and integrity to our community. Over the course of the next several weeks, we will intermittently provide through this media a forum, if you will, that will present to you in segments an explanation of the processes we use, give you an opportunity to ask me questions. You can give me a telephone call. You can send me an email. We can address them in future sessions. I don't want to bore you to tears. We're going to try to keep each one of these blocks relatively short and to the point as we discuss very specific attributes and logistics behind the hiring and the disciplinary process for our agency. I thought we would start today explaining the basics of the hiring process. Because of the borough's size, the borough is required to have a civil service board and to follow the civil service rules and regulations. We have a 3-member board that is appointed by council. This board then, with the assistance of counsel and a solicitor, develops civil service rules and regulations for the borough of Waynesboro that comport both with the statutory requirements and for the specific needs of the borough. These civil service regulations then are used as the foundation for the hiring process for the borough. Basically, the Civil Service Board has a responsibility for the oversight of the hiring process for both the police department and for the paid fire apparatus drivers. If the police department has more than three full-time employees, if the fire department has more than three full-time paid apparatus drivers. If a municipality has less than that, civil service does not apply. In our case, we do. So the Civil Service Board will determine the rules and regulations. They will investigate and issue any subpoenas for violations of the hiring process. They have oversight of the hiring and selection process and of promotions within the agency. The Civil Service Board is also charged with selecting the type of exam that will be used for entry-level personnel. Now, the one thing that I do ask that you understand, anything that we will discuss over the course of these modules will be specific to the borough of Waynesboro. I cannot tell you if you are viewing this and you live in another jurisdiction what their processes may or may not be. So we're going to be specifically focused on the borough of Waynesboro. because although they must meet the overall umbrella of the civil service regulation, they are permitted to include things that are specific and unique for the borough as long as they comply with the statute. So we're addressing Waynesboro borough only. The first thing when there's a vacancy, and that vacancy is authorized to be filled by the council of the borough, the Civil Service Board will post a public notice of the vacancy and that it will be accepting applications to fill that vacancy. They are required to do that at least 2 weeks in advance of the exam. And because of the difficulties of outreach and recruiting, we will often begin that process well in advance of the 2-week period. We will post both internally and externally. We will use the local media. We will post to the print media. We have run radio ads, and we have had these vacancies posted on national search sites. We are trying to get the most comprehensive potential pool of applicants that we can find. It is a difficult thing to do right now, and particularly, you may understand, given current cultural circumstances, uniquely difficult at the present time. Once the notification has been placed that there is a vacancy, there will be a solicitation and a call for applications and sustaining application materials. They will be received by the Civil Service Board. They will then review all of those applications, and they will determine if those individuals meet the minimal entry-level criteria. If they do, they will then be sent notice of the exam. Once the exam is scheduled, and let's talk about the exam for a little bit. The examinations that we use are purchased from a vendor who specifically focuses on the creation and development of civil service exams for police and fire personnel. This is not something that we contrive on our own accord. And to maintain the transparency of the exam process, once those examinations are completed, they are sent to a vendor who then scores the examinations and returns the results to us with just a raw numerical score for the exam. If an individual passes the exam, they are then notified that they have passed the exam, and they are scheduled for a physical agility exam. The individual must demonstrate to us that they have the physical strength and capacity to perform the work-related functions of a law enforcement officer. If an individual passes both the written examination and the physical examination, they are then scheduled for an oral interview. That oral interview is conducted with a board of individuals who are appointed by the Civil Service Board specifically for that task. So now if an individual passes that written examination, they pass the physical agility, and they pass the oral interview, that raw score will then have its veterans preference points added to it. And the Borough of Waynesboro also provides preference points for people who have already had past law enforcement certification and experience. Once those points are added and you have a raw score, the Civil Service Board will then post an eligibility list. That eligibility list will then be used if a selection is to be made. That list is good for a year. It can be extended for 1 year. And if during that period of time there is a vacancy that is authorized for hire, that list must be used to select those individuals from. You must understand in the Commonwealth, we also have what's called Veterans Preference hiring. If you have an individual who is eligible and is in the top 3, civil service selections are made in groups of 3. So if you have one vacancy, you go to the top 3 candidates for your selection. If there is a veteran within that pool, that veteran must first be given a conditional offer of employment. That is simply how it works. I'll allow you to determine whether you believe that to be fair or not. Once an individual is selected for employment, they will receive a conditional offer of hire. That conditional offer of hire is based on them surviving now our vetting process. I believe this will be a good place to end for today. When next we meet, we will talk about what that vetting process is, and if an individual does survive that background investigation, what the training is that is mandated by the state, and the training that is mandated by the borough of Waynesboro before they are ever allowed to function independently as a police officer. I thank you. I encourage you, please, if you have any questions, concerns, complaints, I seem to be here most all the time, please call. If that is not convenient for you, by all means, please give me an email. That information can be found on our website, Waynesboro Police Department Crime Watch. Thank you.